Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our course in Project Architecture 1. And in today's lecture, I am going to explain to you how to make the project standards. Required standards. First, in basic human dimensions, we must know what are the different human dimensions. Disabled people requirement, it's very important in our buildings. Accommodation wheelchair, a circulation element, horizontal or vertical, services spaces like toilets and so on. And after that, minimum requirement for mechanical equipment. This for those who has uh, mechanical instrument or devices in her or his project. For example, for Abdullah, he have something like this. Ma'asir, also anode, khulud. Most of you have mechanical, so we must know what is the minimum requirement for mechanical equipment, like the dimension of spaces, height of spaces, and so on. Spaces with special needs. This means the most important spaces in your project. For example, operation room for Amal, exhibition and aquarium for Maasir, workshops, labs for Khulud, and gymnasium for Safa, labs for Amal, for Iman, and so on. Right. Standard bubble diagram and the placement matrix for this special needs. Sitting area, how to arrange sitting area, standard furniture, a floor area per unit. For example, if we are making hospital, so for patient, if we are designing school, so what is the floor area per each student, per each doctor, per each visitor, per each user, per each passenger, and so on according to your project. A clear height for this special needs. What is the minimum requirement for height? A circulation element for this. For example, if we have auditorium, the circulation element, its dimensions, and so on. And number of toilets, uranians, and wash basin per design unit. If we are making a school, for example, our school for designed for 500 students. So how many toilets I must achieve in my school? How many wash bays and so on? So it's very important to take this in our consideration. So our today's lecture mainly about basic human dimensions, disabled people requirement, a minimum requirement for mechanicals and spaces with special needs. So we will start with basic human dimensions, dimensions and space requirement in accordance with normal measurements and energy consumption. It's very important to know what is the minimum and the maximum dimensions for all positions of the person. If he is sit down, if he is eating, or while he is reading and so on, or resting for an airport and so on. We must know all of this because we must take this in our consideration. For example, in library, when we are and put the channels for books and so on, so the dimensions between this, how it will be if someone will sit down like this and anyone want to pass in behind of him. So the minimum distance between these books, how much and so on. So it's very important. Space requirements of virus body positions. If you are making like this, if we are in gymnasium, for example, so we are making like this. If we are in kitchen, so we have something in here. So it's this dimension is very important. If we are in hospital, like this, and so on. So all these positions, we must know this dimension, and we must take in this our consideration and keep in mind while we are designing in our project. This is the basic human dimensions which we must know in our project. Type second one, disabled people requirement. Disabled people requirement. First, الchair wheel, we must know its dimensions, الwidth, الheight بتاعه, المانوفر, how term, how much it needs in these dimensions, in these directions, and the other one. And if anyone sit down like this, for example, in library, we must achieve something like this for disabled people. Okay. For example, if we have their lift and so on, so how much this it must be in order to know, and if we have a slope or ramp or stairs and so on. So it's very important. Also, the corridors and the lift, a minimum turning circle for a chair wheel, we must know. Door spaces with one door. If any space contains only one door يبقى المينيمم بتاعه how much. If two doors يبقى المينيمم how much. If three doors, if four doors and so on. So we must take these dimensions in our consideration. يبقى أول حاجة اللي هو chair wheel we must take in our consideration ال disabled people requirement. طيب بيقول لي an environment for disabled people needs to be designed to accommodate wheelchair الوايت chair اللي هو كرسي الكرسي المتحرك and allow sufficient space for moving around in safely. You must take this in our consideration. Okay. طيب here, as we see, in this residential sector, access via corridor is the most common layout. We must take this our consideration. If we have corridor like this, for example, here, deep entrance area with receipt keyboard, عندنا هنا مدخل من هنا كده. Okay. Or porch with two leaf doors. If we have two doors, especially in cold area, we have two entrances. We have two doors. This is the first one, and here the second one for heat insulation. So it's very important to take our consideration the distance between here and here in order to be accommodate a chair wheel and so on. طيب فبيقول لي this enables large numbers of angles and corners to be avoided. A straight main corridor is preferable. يفضل ان نعمل straight corridor ما نعملش كده زاويه يعني it's not recommended. Recommended to be directly like this. Okay. The entrance area should be of an appropriate size. The minimum area for entrance holes is 1.5 by 1.5 meter and 1.7 by 1.7 meter for a porch with door. Okay, يبقى نخلي بالنا these conditions we must take in our consideration while our design, because the most common question in jury in senior number 2 for example, how you take in your consideration the requirements for disabled people. So you must show these things in your design. طيب يبقى كده اتكلمنا again requirements قلنا كده خلاص. Okay. The toilets also we must take in our consideration. Okay, the design of toilets, devices, and how the movement inside the toilet. The parking area also we must take in this consideration. Yeah, this parking area for car, but we must make like a corridor around this parking area, 1.2 meters around this space. Okay, so these things we must take also into consideration. Lift or toilets, inside toilets, how he will be enter or how will be exit from the toilet, and the minimum dimensions in plane and in elevations also. This is most important. Lift, how in vertical circulation element, how we will take our consideration the minimum and the maximum dimensions for lift. And here this is new technology to in stair. If we have external stair like this for example, so this device can move the disabled people with their wheelchair from any level to another levels as we see here. Okay, this is another one, another type to move from here up to the second level as we see here, and here in plane. Okay, so this is very important also to take in our consideration. طيب يبقى we discussed together the basic human dimensions, disabled people requirement, and now minimum requirements for mechanical equipment. I said some types of your projects, maybe you have some mechanical requirements. So we must take this in our consideration. Minimum requirement for equipment, mechanical, it contains any extra architecture needs like special dimensions. For example, in our workshops, in our operation room, in hospital, in our aquarium for Maasir project, for Abdullah, almost spaces we have mechanical for luggage and so on. So we must take in this in our considerations the dimensions for this mechanical and so on. Uh, like here, for example, if we have something like this, so we must take it into consideration. If we have some exhaust ear here, for example, so the minimum and maximum height for this. If we have some mechanical, عندنا some mechanical, we will put down, for example, or motors. So we must build here base from reinforced concrete. So its dimensions, its position, and so on. Even the opening, if we are making a door, okay, so the width of this door depending on the mechanical requirement inside this space. So all these things we must know. If I have workshop, so I must know the dimensions of devices and every instrument inside this space before starting design. Okay. Also for lift, its dimensions and around it how much and its height and so on. So all this standard we must be aware with this standard. Right. Species with special needs, this is number 4. First, standard bubble diagram and matrix. ايه ده؟ Species with special needs. We already in last assignment selected 3 most important species. Okay, and we take in our consideration some points, some requirements, and so on. So here in this chapter, we must go in detail for the previous selected 3 species. يبقى الثلاث فراغات اللي انا اخترتهم في الاساينمنت اللي فات هاجي هنا بقى بالتفصيل هعمل لهم الماتريكس بتاعتنا and bubble diagram for each one. ليه؟ احنا بنعمل مثلا مستشفى فور اكزامبل الاوبريشن روم، طب عندي السنتراليزيشن التعقيم، عندي بعد كده التشينجينج روم، عندي preparation for patient, preparation for doctor, and so on. طب what is the relation between all these spaces? So I must write here or make الماتريكس بتاعتي and الايه البابل diagram. We have some workshops or some and so on. Each space you selected in previous assignment, you must be for each one a bubble diagram and adjust matrix. Of course, we have no different type how to make this. We learn together how to make it manual. If you want to make manual or using Photoshop according to your skills, you can make. By definition, the bubble diagram is a freehand diagrammatic drawing made by architects and interior designer to be used for space planning and organization at the preliminary phase of the design process. This is the first process while we are making our design, which space should be near to each one, the relation between each space and the main spaces, and so on. It's a very important phase before we starting our design. The bubble diagram is important because later phases of the design process are based on them. After we are making this bubble diagram, we will start to make our design. So it's very important for species with special needs to make bubble diagram for them. As we said, we can do it like using Photoshop or freehand. Okay, so this is some examples. Okay, and some guides, and I know you are very well in these things because we teach this together from design 1 up to design 6. So okay, no need to repeat these things, but it's to refresh your memory. If you need, you can read it. Okay. Here, for example, for restaurant, how to make it, for lobby and diagram, how to do it. And here, the level of importance for relation, the image being important, essential, and so on, indirect, public, private, and so on. So you can distribute or classified the spaces. It's a private or support space or public, and after that the relation, it is important or indirect or mission and so on according to your space. يبقى for each space which you finished in last or previous assignment, you must make this bubble diagram. طيب a sitting area, if we have theater, for example, it's very important to make this section in order to know the heights and the widths of how to arrange the audience inside our theater and so on. Here, the different types and different dimensions depending on the furniture itself. Here also, if we have some seminars rooms or meeting rooms or classes, how we will arrange it will be like rows like this, or U shape like this, or loop like this, or something like this. So seminar rooms and so on. So you must also provide us with the arrangement for sitting area inside these important spaces. If we had taken workshop, for example, عندي workshop, طب الworkshop دي what I will do it, this may be not suitable for workshop, but it's suitable for classes, suitable for seminars in libraries and so on. But in workshop, it isn't recommended and so on. So you must give us about the sitting arrangement inside your spaces. Standard furniture depending on what you are doing. For example, if you are making administration building, so standard furniture, it must be like this. If you are making in, for example, drawing room in faculties and so on, you must make something like this and so on. You will standard furniture inside these spaces. يعني I am making workshop. You of course maybe I will need one office like this, okay, but I don't need something like this. I need another furniture, so I must explain this furniture. Operation room in hospital, we have another furniture. Aquarium for Maasir, we have another furniture. For passenger, we have another sitting area and so on for Abdullah and so on. Workshops for Khulud and Anoud, gymnasium for Safa, Iman labs, and so on. So, what is the standard furniture used in these spaces? Okay, so it's very important. Various spaces requirement for mechanical or for technical, basic requirement drawing. Okay, the studio rooms for live drawing, painting and modeling, rooms for sculptors and butters and so on. Large space for technical equipment such as butters, wheels, cleans, and pieces of work. Also store room, plaster room, temp room, and so on. يبقى any special spaces you have in your project and you already selected it in previous assignment, so you must focus on the standard furniture for these spaces. طيب الفلور اريا بير يونت اتس فيري امبورتنت. يعني ايه فلور اريا بير يونت؟ يونت ديزاين. يعني ايه يونت ديزاين؟ if we are making design for hospital يبقى عندي اليونت ديزاين ايه بقى؟ ممكن تبقى patient، ممكن تبقى دكتور. اوكي؟ طب if we are making design for school يبقى per teacher and per student. If we are making for airport يبقى it will be per passenger. If we are making for school like and Anoud and Khulud يبقى same per student or per user and so on. So we must make like this student requirement 2 meter square per head. يبقى for student in classes or in school 2 meter square per head. So if I am asking you, for example, we are need to make a class. This class accommodate for 30 students. So the area for this class 2 by 30 يبقى 60 متر سكوير. It's very important الايه الريكويرمنت. طيب الشيب requirement. The class, what is the most popular shape for this class? Circular, ellipse, of course no. So it can be rectangular or square. طب الويندوز بيقول لي at least at one side. يبقى عندي سايد واحد بس بيكون على اللي فيه الشبابيك عندي في الفصل. يبقى this it's very important. يبقى لازم نجيب per patient محتاج كم متر. We will find this in our 3 international books, Naivart, Time Saver, Metric. We will find all this. Okay, and الشيب ريكوايرمنت. الشيب مثلا فور اكزامبل الاوبريشن روم بتبقى ريكتانجل ممكن وممكن تبقى سكوير بس سيركلر برضه لا اليبس اند سو اون. طيب الاكزيبيشن ممكن بقى اطلع فور اورجانيك فورمز اند سو اون. يبقى we must have all this requirement. والستاندرد سبيس requirement overall من 0.35 up to 55 سكوير متر بيوبل في المدرسة. البوك ايشو اند ريتيرن 5 سكوير متر ورك بليس اند كاتالوج سبيس من 20 ل 40. انفورميشن يبقى لايبريان من 10 ل 20 سكوير متر. اوكي. This is most important. You must calculate the floor area per unit design in your project. الأوديتوريوم theme how to make information or some important information for auditorium. Also, you must have the distance between rows, the height, the width, and so on. This is very important. So, if we have here floor area requirement per student from 1.8 up to 2 meters square. The career height is very important from 2.7 up to 3.4 meter. The width of staircase is also very important. 1.5 minimum, 2.5 meter maximum, and the width of corridors 1.25 up to 2 meter and for less than 180 people. يبقى here this mean for 4 points you must have the standard for floor area, the career height, the width of staircase, and width of corridor in your project. يبقى these numbers it's very important to have it. This is for school, and if you have for example airport يبقى for passenger I must know the floor area for one passenger. What is the career height for the waiting area which you selected Abdullah in your project? The width of staircase in the airport, the width of corridors in the airport. طيب after that all of you the selected spaces in last assignment you must know all this information for them. Okay, here the dimensions زي ما قلنا هنا I must take in my consideration here. For example, the one will sit down here and another one will stand here. So the minimum dimension here 1.3 and so on. So this is very important when you are making furniture in your spaces with special needs. طب the circulation element. Circulation element is very important. It will be as a single, so 60 centimeter for the width of person. Okay, if you have 1 or 2 or 3 and so on. And the placement of the door also it's very important. This door, for example, 1.2 meter, 1.5 or 90 meters or 75 or 60 centimeter and so on, depending on the function of the space itself. Okay, so circulation element, of course circulation element it means a horizontal circulation element and a vertical circulation element. So also the stairs, the minimum dimension for the stairs, we are making corridor. If this corridor for 1 or for 2 or for more than and so on. If this corridor from here both side wall or maybe some door from here or 2 doors. يبقى in this case if we have facing doors here يبقى minimum width of this corridor زي ما احنا شايفين هنا will from 2.1 meters up to 2.3 meters. يبقى نخلي بالنا لو احنا في طرقه في بابين قصاد بعض يبقى عرض القرآن يبقى قد ايه and so on. طيب for disabled people we must take in our consideration الشير wheel الويتس بتاعه قد ايه in order to increase the corridor. So the minimum corridor width 1.2 meter. يبقى دي برضه circulation element. طب number of toilets, urinals, and wash basin per design unit. We have, for example, in our school or in our airport passengers, patients and doctors in our hospitals, visitors and students in our workshops and exhibitions and so on. طيب, how many toilets I need for them? I must know how many one, يعني how many people, how the number of people needs how many of toilets and so on. Also, this standard you will find in standard book, 3 standard book اللي هم تايم سيفر ونايبر ومتريك. The number of toilet urinals and wash basin required is based on total number of pupils and separated according to sex. We have female and we have male, so it should be separated. But it should be set as an out in the local school building guidelines. Sanitary installation with direct daylight and ventilation are preferred. It's recommended to have a daylight and ventilation for toilets. Okay, but we can make also artificial ventilation and lighting if it will help to accommodate in our project. Horizontal and vertical circulation usually double as an emergency escape routes. Escape routes must have a clear width of minimum 1 meter على كل 150 بيوبل. Here بيقول لي for example for mid boys محتاجين 15 متر okay 15 meters. Here for 100 girls we need 15 meters. بيقول لي number of uraniums half of WCs. يعني ايه الكلام ده؟ انا عندي for example for boys لو انا عندي هنا number of uraniums half of WC. How many closed area for WC? For example we have 6 يبقى uraniums يبقى كام نصهم؟ يبقى 3. Number of laboratories 1 for every 50 pupils. طيب for more than 300 students, one laboratory for every 100 pupils. In gymnasium or school, number of shower room, half of the pupils of the largest class using pool at any time. يعني عندنا حمام سباحة في الاني تايم عندنا أكبر كلاس فيه كام مثلا سي 30 طالب يبقى النمبر اوف شاورز يبقى فيه كام 15 واحد. درينكينج فونتنز لازم نعمل لهم اماكن عشان الميه. يقول لي 1 تانك فور 50 بيوبلز. يبقى if our school accommodate 500 يبقى قسم 500 على 50 يبقى 10. يبقى لازم اوفر لهم you must achieve 10 فونتنز او اماكن يشربوا منها 10 places. 1 WC fixture for every 35 pupils. يبقى كل 35 طالب محتاجين لهم 1 WC. So these things you must take into consideration. This is in school. But Abdullah, he has passengers. For Maasik, she has visitors. For Amal, she has patients and doctors. For Safa, عندها الفيزيتورز وعندها المينتيننس وعندها الادمنستريشن. For عنود and خلود عندهم طلبة okay for students and also for teachers. يعني الستاندرد دي it's different from users depending on the user type itself. يعني pupils عندهم toilets, teachers they have own standard and own toilets also. So we must take in our consideration this standard. Okay, here's some reference if you need to come back. Time saver standard for building type, it's very important to have these books, and here some reference if you need to know information. Okay, so what is our assignment? I will show you now our assignment. This is our assignment. Inshallah, submission date 11th of April. For your own graduation project, explain the project standard in the following point. Basic human dimensions according to the activities in your project. يعني for example, for Abdullah, he doesn't have students in his project. يبقى no playground and so on. يبقى dimensions needs for human dimensions in project Abdullah is totally different from for Amal, for example, and totally different from عند مين؟ عند صفاء, because Jim and so on and Safa. So we need the human dimensions according to the activities in your project. Disabled people requirement, it's very important. Spaces with special needs. These special needs or spaces, these spaces which you already selected in previous one. But if you didn't focus on some very important spaces in last assignment, you must focus here. For example, workshop for Anud and Khulud, you must focus on this workshop here because you didn't make any focusing عليها in last assignment. But here you must focus on these workshops, especially you. Gymnasium for Safa, waiting area for Abdullah, and luggage Syria Abdullah for luggage in airport. You must focus on it because this is a mechanical equipment. الاكواريوم يا باشمهندسه مقاسف, you must make focusing على الاكواريوم and its walls تعمل ازاي, الفلورز, and the main important, the most important in aquarium الايه, البامبس, البامبس روم فور اكواريوم هيبقى شكلها ايه, اتس فيري امبورتنت. الاوبريشن روم يا باشمهندسه امل, اتس فيري امبورتنت تو ميك فوكس على الاوبريشن روم ويز ديتيلز. طيب بعد كده المينيمم ريكوايرمنت فور equipment. Okay, as I said, each one of you have mechanical in your project. So what is the minimum requirement? Requirement in space, الدايمنشن شكلها ايه؟ الاوبننجز هعمل فتحات شكلها قد ايه and its size and so on. المينيمم هايت, السقف بتاعي يكون شكله ايه and so on. Circulation element in your project. Circulation element, this mean a horizontal circulation element, a vertical circulation element, the dimensions, and don't forget for disabled people. A seating arrangement, if you have classes, you must see how they will sit down. If you have auditorium, you must show us how they will sit down. If you have waiting area, like Abdullah, for example, you must show us. If you have something in a project of Safa, like cinema or something like this, how they will sit down. And standard furniture and dimensions for all your projects. So these points, ده الاسايمنت بتاعتنا البروجكت ستاندرد. افتر ذيس وان وي هاف اونلي وان اساينمنت ان شاء الله, اللي هي الفاينل اللي عليها الماكسيمم لود اوف يور اوف اور كورس, اللي هي الديزاين ايديا. ان شاء الله we will speak this in suitable time ان شاء الله. Okay, so the submission date of the current assignment Sunday 11th of April, and we know the last day of classes 22nd of April. So we must, يعني, as much as we can to finish this one in time. Don't delay please, because the most important assignment we will start at 11th up to 22nd of April. Okay, the marks for this assignment is 20 marks. Do you have any question? Do you have any question?
لا دكتور شكرا.